one. Hello, and you are listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, and I am your host, Craig Pera from www.themindfulhabit.com. I am the founder of the Mindful Habit System, and this is a podcast to help you create healthy sexuality and a great life, because those two things are inexorably intertwined, as I like to say. And today we are talking about religious shame. And I have a very special guest, personal friend, let me tell you about Tony. So this guy's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He is a certified mindful habit coach. Listen, this gets better. I could stop right there, and this would be an awesome. This gets better. Host of the award-winning podcast, The Virtual Couch, in his first book. He is killing me on podcast numbers, everybody. I just want to acknowledge that right now. And his first book, He's a Porn Addict, Now What? An expert and a former addict answer your questions. He's the expert. He co-authored it with Joshua Shea. That's going to be out on November 1st. And before becoming a therapist, Tony spent a decade as a software executive and owned his own computer hardware company, was the co-founder of a successful nut and bolt company. And I got to tell you, this guy knows more about addiction and nuts and bolts than anybody in the universe.
What a combination, right?
And a shaving cream company.
Right.
This is great, man. Wrote a humor column for a regional newspaper. And listen, I have to read this to you because I need you, the listener, to really get a sense of who you're talking to, because, man, I am so blessed to have this man in my life. He's such a great friend and such an inspiration. And let me continue to tell you why. So he wrote that column for a decade. He continues to contribute weekly to regular online publications. He's been married for 29 years.
Come on
29. We're getting ready for 21 in another week and a half.
There you go.
And married to his high school sweetheart, Wendy. They have 4 kids, 21, 19, 17, and 15. Incredibly modest, so this must be a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it.
Super uncomfortable.
Listen, an avid ultra-marathon runner, having completed over 150 marathons and ultra-marathons, including over a dozen races of 100 miles or more. Tony has a successful faith-based online pornography addiction program called The Path Back. You guys can find that at pathbackrecovery.com, which is based on my system, the Mindful Habit, and added all the incredibly wonderful things that he does. He runs a very successful therapy practice here in Northern California. You can read about more about him visiting TonyOverbay.com. Tony, welcome to the show, my man.
Well, Craig, that was super uncomfortable. And Craig, what am I really running from? Is that the question?
What are you running from?
And said that one time, and it made me laugh very hard.
Yeah. And everybody, Tony did not struggle with compulsive sexual behavior in any way. But it's interesting. We've used to help draw some of the analogies, like it takes a driven, focused man to run 100 miles.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like when I go speak to kids and stuff, and they talk about why do you run 100 miles? I like to joke, because I can eat ice cream and I can do that sort of thing. But really, at its core, I think I found the quote healthy addiction. I mean, I know that was there were my demons there. That if I went 2 or 3 days without running, then I'm fatter, shorter, balder, a worse husband, father, therapist, etc. So I kind of feel like I got off lucky.
It's amazing. I've been to one of his 100 miles runs, friend, and it's so inspirational. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm so blessed to have such a quality person in my life. And so, and I'm so excited to talk about this topic. He's so well versed and gifted. So first off, what we're talking about religious shame today. What is religious shame, so we can frame what we're talking about?
And Craig, you are so kind. I view Craig as a bit of a sensei. I mean, I am definitely, I'm a certified mindful habit coach, and I mean that mindful habit system is what has really helped me help the thousands of people that I've been able to help. The mindful habits kind of what turned the corner for me. So I want to get that out there right up front. And I'll kind of maybe talk about that in a minute too. And at some point, maybe I get this out there now. Do you remember the first time I got to work with Craig was we were presenting to a bunch of religious leaders in the area, and Craig and I were, right? And
Yes.
Craig was, what a humble guy Craig is, because he said, can I just go in there with my shock and awe technique, or is this going to kind of blow these guys out of the water? And we were like, Craig, you might want to dial that one back just a tiny bit.
And I still haven't gotten invited back. Yeah, I learned a valuable lesson, friends, in knowing your audience, because as you all know, I am passionate, and religious shame is one of the issues that we spent some time talking about, of how some of these incredibly well-intentioned, men of the cloth, healing men, were making it worse.
And that's where I feel like, what is religious shame? I mean, I feel like, I'm glad you said that. I kind of come at it from the pastor, the bishop, the priest, their goal, or they feel like they are doing what is best. So I always like to kind of start with a bless their heart. They're coming from a place where they really want to help somebody. And a lot of them, most of them, don't have a lot of the training, and they don't really have the tools. And a lot of them don't have the patience, and they don't have the support system to truly work through someone's addiction, to spend that time that somebody needs to feel like that is, they're connected to their priest, their pastor, their bishop. So I feel like the religious shame actually comes from a place where the person feels like if they can get the addict in front of them to feel shame, that for some reason that is going to be the thing that finally gets the addict to say, oh my gosh, I need to stop this. And where we kind of know, if we really break down what is guilt and what is shame, I mean, I kind of like to start there. I always like to say that, guilt's okay. Guilt's, I've heard it called a stop sign. So if I forget to pick my grandma up from the store, I'm going to feel guilty. I should have picked up grandma. I need to go back and get grandma. Shame is the part that comes in and says, and you're a horrible individual, and everybody's going to find out that you don't pick up your grandma. You probably even hate your grandma, and you should probably not ever have any interaction with the humankind again. So I feel like that distinguishing characteristic of guilt versus shame is pretty significant too. And so I feel like when religious leaders are saying, do you realize how bad this is? Do you realize that you are in the grasp of, the adversary? Or do you recognize you may lose your family? That they're saying that because they feel like that this is something the addict has never thought of. And okay, if I tell them this, all of a sudden now they will want to stop. Where I feel like all that really does to an addict in front of them is to say, man, here I come to confess, or here I come for help. And holy cow, man, if I blow it now I've got this guy, my religious leader, who is going to even think worse of me. And who knows even what to think about what God must think of me if my religious leader is telling me, you better get your act together right now and never do this again. So I feel like that concept of shame, again, coming from a place where the religious leader thinks if I shame them enough, now they will finally stop acting out. But you and I both know, Craig, that the shame is what then drives somebody back into the shadows. So then, heaven forbid, there is a relapse. Then are they going to go right back to the religious leader and say, man, I struggled again? Or are they going to go back and say, no, I'm good. But inside they're saying the good old story we hear all the time. Okay, I will never do it again. This was the last time. I got to just try harder. So I feel like that shame just kind of further drives people back into the shadows.
And what's interesting about that shame cycle that the addict is getting externally, it's the same shame cycle, right, that they're internally doing to themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah. And so it's like, and that's where I feel like whenever I get to speak to religious leaders, I mean, I want to change this whole narrative. I want somebody to come into their priest, their pastor, their bishop's office and say, okay, if I'm struggling with this, I want those first words to be, hey, we got this. Like, thank you so much for coming in. I want you to know you're loved. I want you to know, and if it's a religious person, I want you to know, hey, God loves you. There's things such as grace. There's the atonement. There's these things, you are one who taught me this, where you got to anchor in hope. I mean, you got to anchor in, something good. And so I feel like that's the part that the shame kind of goes against. So I love when I get to teach bishops or pastors or religious leaders, it's just, we don't even have to talk about the addiction when they come in. Just give them a hug or tell them thank you for coming in and let them know that, we've got this.
And ultimately it produces greater results because they're meeting the person where he is. So now that we know what it is, what is it about religious shame, Tony, that makes it so impactful? So like a scar, a wound. Let's unpack that for me.
Well, so it's funny that, one of the hardest things now, and having done this for a long time, is just, like with you get to see the success stories, you know the things that work. And I would guess you can kind of join me in saying, I am still waiting for the shame-based approach that has really netted long-term positive results. I mean, it might kind of get somebody to stop for a while because they feel horrible because they receive so much shame. But I feel like what I see are addicts that continually come back to me, and I'm trying to say, all right, here's all these strength-based tools we're going to use. Here's some hope that we're going to anchor in. And they're like, right, but I really do. I promise you, I feel super bad. I mean, I really do feel really, really bad. And I'm like, okay, great, but let's get back to those positive things. And I feel like it's so rooted in that they feel like they have to have this, from the Bible, sackcloth and ashes, broken heart and a contrite spirit. They feel like if I'm not showing this professional in front of me that I feel a lot of guilt and shame, then they're not even going to believe me. Because I feel like it's still just this rooted thing where they feel like they have to have that to move forward. And that's where I always want to say, hey, you're here in front of me because that has not been working. So can we kind of drop the shame for a little bit? Maybe trust me. We got this. I don't know. Has that been your experience?
Oh my gosh. So there's, I've been spending a lot of time lately, Tony, with the internal family systems model, with Richard Schwartz, and in one of their pieces of literature, they posed this great question. And I want to share this question with everybody. It's so like let's take the part that feels shame, right? Let's take that part. Let's put them in a chair next to us and pose this question. And if you're watching the video, you can see me. I'm looking over to my part and ask this part: what do you fear would happen if you stopped doing this job?
Whoa.
What do you fear would happen if you stopped doing this job? What I love about that question, Tony, is it automatically forces the guy who's been using shame unsuccessfully as a compliance mechanism to drive the not doing the thing. And when you ask that part, when you ask that question, it ultimately forces a discussion around how that part was trained, and they see the shame, which is designed to help. It's always used, it's, let's look at shame from parents, well-intentioned, trying to help their children, trying to instill the fear of God in them and drive compliance that way. But we've learned in the professional sector that doesn't work. It actually makes things worse. And that training is reinforced for these men and women too, in their religious lives, in their lives at school sometimes, and in their home with their parents, and then ultimately in their head. And it's important to recognize the purpose that it's serving, because the intention is to drive better results. It's just that it doesn't work. Does that make sense?
I know, it's really good. That does make sense. Yeah. Because that's kind of given a little bit of empathy toward the person who is trying to throw the shame your way.
That's right. That's right. So it's, what is it about it though that makes it so self-destructive, Tony, at the deepest level? This is such a problem, and you see it, I see it. We talk about how we see it and how to challenge it. What is it in your experience that makes this such a negative habit that must be broken?
So there's a couple of things. That's a great question. There's a couple of things. One, I think you can go with and I don't want to sound cliched, but the lack of self-love or lack of confidence, and those things we can kind of go back and do good old deep-rooted childhood issues, people never feeling like they're enough. And so, I mean, we could spend an entire podcast there. I'll tell you, one of the things I think is fascinating is I've got to do some work with people, and I know you you get to work with some of these people as well, but we'll call them high-end clients, so that have maybe gone and literally gotten functional brain scans around the way that their brains work. And I found that in one of these meetings that I got to participate in, the doctor that had done the brain scan said that there's still such a reward going on in that kind of that reward center of the brain when someone acts out in that very moment, when they do have that kind of impulsive behavior, that the brain is no dummy. I mean, the brain kind of feels like, well, that feels great. So I want to kind of keep my options open here. So I'll listen to this strength-based approach, but I'm going to reserve the right to still have a little bit of this shame here, because I know if I go down to this shame place that I'm going to eventually get my hit of dopamine. So I feel like that was kind of fascinating too. So it's almost like they're afraid to go all in on the strength-based positive thing that we're trying to sell, because guess what? The brain's kind of going, hold on a minute. If this works, we're not getting that, we're not lighting up the pleasure center like we've always done in the past.
So the shame itself is activating that part in a similar way to the acting out behavior.
Yeah. So it's like, it's almost keeping that little ember alive. So I almost feel like when somebody finally can say, fine, I will give up completely on this idea that shame is necessary for me to change, that's a big move. I mean, that's where I get the sense of, because I was struggling for a while of why do people want to hang on to just a little bit of shame. I'm still going to feel really, really bad about myself for doing this. Like I need to do that. And that's where I felt like this kind of epiphany hit where, okay, if I hang on to that little bit of shame, maybe it's subconscious, but it's, then I reserve the right to feel really horrible about myself and then withdraw and then act out. So, I mean, it really is giving up that, kind of giving themselves over to the strength-based systems that you and I know work, and kind of letting go of but shouldn't I still have a little bit of shame? And they got to give that up.
What about, Tony? Now we've talked about this. So I know you've been in this place, and so client acts out, slips, loses agency and control. And you and I both know we have to empower them, inspire them to find the gift in their failure. And of course, there's, often natural resistance to that. But there's this need, they need it to feel bad. They need it. If they don't feel shame, and this is really the answer to that question. What do you fear would happen if you stopped doing this job? In our example, feeling shameful, the wheels would come off the bus. You'd be running around at the whorehouse, the strip club, the unrestrained man, you would lose control. Give me some of the biblical terms, right? Like you're the rawness,
Sodom and Gomorrah, Heckfire.
Yes.
Living together, the apocalypse, Gog and Magog, all of this stuff. That's right.
Yes. And again, I think that's very necessary to understand, because it's designed to drive compliance, to prevent these negative behaviors that these other parts may have desires for, and of course makes it worse. But I think when clients understand the purpose that it's serving, and that's why I love that, I call it my positive attributes. Whatever bad habit my clients have, I ask them to make them tell me all the good parts about that bad habit: anger, getting defensive, shutting down, acting out. And shame's just such a great example, because there's this innate fear, right, that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. They need that shame.
Here's a Craig Pear exclusive. So this, I'm just thinking about this, and I used to teach these early morning Sunday school classes for years, and I remember doing a deep dive at one point on the Old Testament, and there was this concept where a lot of people don't like the Old Testament because it is a whole lot of, and this person was smitten and this person was smitten, and lots of smiting.
A lot of smitten going on.
A lot of smitten going on. A lot of smiting going on.
Yeah,
and then it's like, and then Jesus comes, and now we're really happy and we love each other, and, no more eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And I had read this historian that had talked about, that language of the Old Testament was there because you were dealing with people at that time that the only thing that they knew was, hey, if you do that, I'm going to smite you. So it was almost like it was rooted in this, this kind of, at that time, what was necessary. And now we have, we like to think that we have much more evolved intellects, and we have a cognitive ability to be more rational and that sort of thing. But we still like to harken back to those, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to be smitten, So I think that goes against the strength-based approach. It's like the strength-based approach is saying, no, like, I'll still love you. We'll figure this out. And it's like, yeah, but what about the smiting? I mean, is that when does that come into play?
Someone's going to get smited.
Right. Yeah. And so then I think that just keeps people there in that shame cycle.
Well, and the other opportunity that it provides, Tony, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is the word I'm looking for as like reminding them of grace, forgiveness. And there are a couple of other terms that you use. Yeah. How important is it for clients to balance that shame perspective with other aspects of the Bible, of their spirituality?
Oh, I love that. This is you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to eat the dessert right now. But I mean, this is my big finish, my big crescendo. But I mean, it's perfect timing, and we can keep going, of course, Craig. But this is the part I love and this part's changed for me a little bit in the job. So if we're staying in this realm of Christianity, and if we're staying in the realm of, there's this concept of the atonement, where it's when Christ went in the Garden of Gethsemane, he died for everyone's sins. So that, there's a lot of wonderful sayings in Christianity where you try your best, he makes up the rest, he makes up the difference, those sort of things. So as a therapist, one thing that I started noticing over the years, all the people that kind of bring their baggage into therapy is no one on earth has the experiences that individual has that has brought them to that point, whether it's nature, nurture, DNA, whether it's sexual abuse, molestation, abandonment, people dying, and so that is what has made them the person they are. And a lot of times those are the things that drive someone to addiction, or those are the things that drive someone to not feeling like they can communicate with a partner, or not feeling like they can communicate with a religious leader, or the things that keep them in the shadows. Or so I feel like keeping in mind that, the person is flawed, or they are not perfect. And so the concept there is, all right, if I am going to go ahead and get rid of this shame and lean in, I might not be perfect at it. In a Christian perspective, we know that if I'm trying my best, then here comes this atonement at the end, this wonderful reckoning, and then we all get to live together, and we've got our harps and our wings, and we're on clouds and golden streets, and that that God really does make up the difference. So I don't know if that kind of answers that question, but I can't hear you.
That is the punchline, and I absolutely agree with you, because there's a retraining that has to occur, and because again, the shame is a learned habit that is manifesting to drive compliance, but failing miserably and making things worse and moving you away from God, away from love, away from connection, family, friends, purpose-driven life. And that, I've talked with clients before, and I work with men of all faiths, Tony, as you know, and not a spiritual man in that regard myself, but I've got all my books, and I pull out the New Testament, and I'd say, are we reading the same book, brother? Because there's a hell of a lot of forgiveness, love, and compassion in here.
Amen.
And make them find the quotes that support, because you notice a lot of men have the quotes for the fire and brimstone, especially for the chronic relapsers, right? They've got all the, I'm cast out through, God and other things like that. That your experience too?
Oh, 100%. So I'm with you. I'm what about the part where God is love, or charity suffereth long, is patient, is kind? I mean, those are the things that I feel like. So if I kind of go back to this scenario in a pastor's office, and we go back to this, I really feel this. I feel like as a therapist, this is what I do. I 100% guarantee this is what you do with your work with men. But they're coming to the pastor just like I feel like they come to me at times, and they're saying, "All right, I want help, and then, but can we go ahead and you tell me what I need to do, and then I'll show you that I'm not going to do it, so you can go ahead and let me know that I'm broken, so I can get back to acting out." And I feel like whether it's the pastor, whether it's the therapist, whether it's Craig Para, our job is to say, oh, no. Like I got you, God is love. Or, hey, I love you, man. I'm grateful that you're here. And so if you don't do what we're kind of saying you need to do, don't go anywhere. Come back and let's break down that game film. That's what I like about what you taught me well, is let's learn from even the relapse. I always say, all right, I'm your guy. You can tell me anything. Be honest with me, and let's look at where was the trigger? Did you find yourself at home alone and you were aware of it, but you decided not to leave? Let's break that down. I'm your safe place. I'm not going to tell you, man, you're right, you're broken. Go and sin. Because again, go back to this Christian perspective. I don't remember seeing that in the New Testament, where it's like, I gave you a shot, but hit the bricks. It was like, come unto me, take my yoke upon you. Your burden will be light. That's our job. That's what Christ was preaching. So I'm with you.
And the interesting thing about shame is how broad its impact is. It impacts the connection to the man's wife. Ooh, it impacts the connection to his God, potentially his children, and one specific area that isn't in the religious context but grows from it is even that concept, Tony, of failure being an opportunity. Is tainted and colored by that shame habit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. So, all right. So you're kind of hitting on, man, I love this stuff too. So Can I do a quick backstory?
Please do.
So yeah, we talked earlier. I was in a career software sales. I mean, I got to travel and it was fun and stuff. Then, but it wasn't kind of filling my cup. I did feel a little bit called to work with men as a therapist. So I go back to school, get the master's in counseling, and I would tell everybody in the classes, they would say, "Why are you here?" And I would say, "I'm going to work with men." And the women in the room would go, "Oh," and then the teachers would usually kind of chuckle because they were practicing therapists. So then I get out in the community and I'm ready to, all right, guys, let me help you. And guys don't come to therapy. So nobody had mentioned that at first. So then the only people I start getting are the people that are struggling with pornography addiction, that their wives have caught them and they're going to leave them unless they go see a professional. So I play the role as a professional. So I could do all that stuff with the, and in the religious world, there's some pretty non-evidence-based techniques, like when you're thinking a bad thought, then just sing a hymn. And can I tell you that there's some pretty interesting data out there that now shows if you go to any good big church, when a popular hymn pops up, there's guys out in the congregation that now are thinking bad thoughts. So, I mean, that was probably not the intent, right? So I start finding as guys are coming to me that it's not so much of the behavioral interventions or that sort of thing. I'm finding that guys are turning to the pornography because they've got the early exposure, 8 to 11. They've kind of gone there for a long time. They've trained their neural pathways of the brain to kind of go there when they feel lonely or hungry or angry or tired or disconnected. So I start finding there's these areas, these voids in their life. They typically aren't in a wonderful relationship, or they feel like they don't know how to communicate well in their marriage. They feel like they aren't the best fathers they can be. They maybe don't like their career. They've let their health get out of whack. They maybe aren't connected with their faith. So I felt like there's these voids. And so then anytime one of these voids, I like to call them, are activated, then the brain goes, hey, we got this. And it comes with an orgasm. So it's like, and then it's like any of those areas. So then I start trying to find these nice evidence-based tools to help shore up people's marriages and to help them become better parents and to help them get exercise routines and to help them find their spirituality, not the spirituality that they are told they're supposed to feel. And so it's like, as you start shoring up these areas, guess what? The brain isn't going to the what's wrong with me story as often, which leads to relapse. And that's a lot of what you've taught me as well with the, all right, we can address the addiction, but how about we fill your life with purpose and meaning? And because that's going to really scratch that itch. I don't know. I feel like that's, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's for me at that low point in my life, Tony, that we've talked about, two very, very simple principles collided. And even as I say, I'm about to share them now, I can picture someone listening and saying, duh, like give me a break. And we all know there's a difference between knowing something and knowing something. And those two concepts were, number one, break a habit, make a habit. Yeah. That statement was like, I saw it written in such a way as the golden rule, must do, mandatory. And here I was obsessively focusing on not doing something. So I lacked the make a habit part. And the other part was the feed the right wolf story, that Native American tale where there were two wolves inside us, good, bad, which one wins? The one you feed. And it was at that low point where I was studying success stories. You read about addicts who've overcome incredible trials and tribulations. And in my effort to start at the destination, I wanted to back into it. Here's where I wanted to go. I noticed there was one thing that every success story had in common. The man or woman was living a purpose-driven life.
Yeah. Okay.
They were living a purpose-driven life. And I think that is because when you realize that this negative behavior that makes you feel so shameful, that's having this terrible impact on your life, that it's serving a purpose, it's doing something for you, it's meeting a need.
Yeah.
And if we can all agree that the only path going forward is meeting those needs in a healthy, constructive way, that equals a purpose-driven life, when you're meeting your needs in a healthy, constructive way.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Can I read a quote?
Please.
You nailed it. I mean, of course you nailed it. This is what you do. You are the master. There's a LDS writer leader who said, his name's Spencer W. Kimball. He said, Jesus saw sin as wrong, but also was able to see the sin as springing from deep and unmet needs on the part of the sinner. This permitted him to condemn the sin without condemning the individual. so we can show forth love for others. Even when we're called upon to correct them, we need to be able to look deeply enough into the lives of others to see the basic causes of their failures and shortcomings. So I like to sometimes replace that sin with addiction. And because I like that principle, because that kind of speaks to, sin or addiction or bad habits are not something that is this final and terrible condemnation of who we are, but they're symptoms or results of this deep or unmet need in our life that's caused this figurative void within us. And that's where I like what you're saying. How do we don't just, when we remove the sin or the addiction, we sometimes leave this void. And that becomes, I don't know, it can drive people crazy.
Well, it's the dry drunk, Tony. It's the people who call us on the phone. And dear listener, you've heard me tell this story before. Whenever someone calls and leads with, "Hi, it's Mike. I've been sober for 6 months."
Uh-huh.
Like, when I first hear that sentence, I start and I say, "Oh my God, you must be so happy. Did I have something to do with that? Your wife must be so proud. Everything must be going good. Are you calling to tell me how great things are?" And eventually, so anyway, if whoever calls me now, that'll be my response. You'll see in action. But when they say that, and then eventually they're like, "Stop. No, my life is miserable.
Yeah.
My relationship's worse than ever. I feel insignificant. I have, I'm a nervous wreck all the time because I took away my primary numbing, coping, and escaping strategy." So that is, it really highlights, and anyone listening to this knows this. We've been preaching this forever. It's that make a habit part. You've got to be moving towards something that inspires you, that makes you feel good about yourself, where your acting out behavior is the distraction, not the other way around, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this one I still think of whenever I was at your place, we were filming, and Michelle would make amazing almond flour cookies with carob chips, and they were the greatest things ever. But so, I think about that it's so much easier to add something into somebody's life than to subtract it. So I think about that instead of just saying, all right, I'm going to cut out all things bad from a diet. It's how about I add a almond flour cookie with some carob chips and maybe an extra apple or a banana each day, and then slowly move that bad out. So in this situation, we've created this void, so we better be throwing those almond flour cookies in that.
We better be filling that. We better be filling that. So Tony, for guys who do want to fill that void, tell me a little bit about the path back. How can people find it online? How can they get in touch with you and find you?
Yeah, so pathbackrecovery.com. It is, and I talk about it often in the program. It is based on your mindful habit system. And I didn't even know back when you and I first started working together how kind of revolutionary that was, that it is kind of, that whole strength-based model. It's funny because when I ran into you, and you're such a good salesman, that I'm like, I'm in, this is great. And then realize over the last few years that, oh, wow, there's still a lot of people that are thinking the shame-based model or the medical model or and it's, man, the strength-based model is something else. So pathbackrecovery.com is where you can find the program, and it is a faith-based program. And I've done several episodes on my podcast, The Virtual Couch, where I talk about pornography. You are hopefully going to come on, and I want to hear your story on there because it's incredible, and you've helped so many people. You've helped me, then help other people. But so yeah, pathbackrecovery.com, and there's you can contact me through there for individual coaching or for the online program or that sort of thing. But I'm super grateful that. I don't remember how we met each other, but it's like, changed my life to be able to help other people. And I'm super grateful for that.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's been a privilege, and we're going to have Tony back, everybody. To break a habit, you have to make a habit. And for those of you struggling with shame, particularly religious shame, please reach out to Tony Overbay. He is listen, I've come in contact with so many different people in my career, and there's only one person that I'd give my child to, my baby. And I mean that with all my heart, Tony. And it's growing and it's evolving, and I'm so excited to be part of your journey. So thank you for being here, brother.
I appreciate it, Craig. I do. That means a lot. Thank you. Can't wait to have you on my show.
Oh, I can't wait to be there. So thank you for listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. Jump on the website, the www.themindfulhabit.com. There's a free training if you're looking to learn more. And of course, listen to other podcast episodes. Embrace your power of choice and feed the right wolf inside you. Bye.